welcome to Power Surge. Today, we are so excited. I'm especially excited. We have got a good friend of mine. I met this man about 10 years ago, and I tell you what, his name is Eric Wilner. And this man is so impressive. He has done so many good things for the world. And we're going to hear a story today. But I have to tell you, one of the things I am most impressed with, because I just do the two weekly shows, and sometimes that's a little tough for me. He does a daily radio show, and they're celebrating their 25th anniversary or just getting ready to. And he has not had one day that's not broadcasted. He has had every day that he has been on and broadcasted for 25 years. To me, that is remarkable, amazing, and simply awesome. That being said, I am really excited to invite on our dear friend, Eric Wilner. Eric, come on in. There you go. Eric, you have done so much in your life, and man, I could listen to you talk for hours, hours and hours. And we've chatted many times before, and you have so many cool things. If you were to narrow it down to two, three, four things that were real pivotal turning points in your life, what would you say those might be? And before you go there, is there anything else you want us to know about you first?
Well, I'm sure a lot of it'll come out in our conversation, but there have been a couple of pivotal places. Obviously, the start of the radio show. I'll add that one in there. Now celebrating it, it's even hard to believe. In fact, when you were doing your intro and you were talking about how we met 10 years ago, it might even have been a little bit longer, but it has flown by so fast. And the same thing, the 25 years that we've been on the air. I remember when it started. In fact, my oldest son was born the same year.
Wow.
So, they both remind me of how long, they've each been around. But, that has changed everything. It gave me a platform to share probably one of my biggest passions, which is real estate. And more importantly, helping people, enabling people, and educating people, that real estate is not this big, complicated, mysterious thing. I honestly and firmly believe in my heart that everyone should own their real estate. Real estate is the centermost cornerstone of everyone's financial plan. Nobody successful doesn't own real estate.
Mhm.
And it is probably the fastest, safest way for people to build a financial foundation and get to financial independence.
Well, one of the funny things, we were talking earlier, and I told you that I'd been living in Ecuador for 3 years. That is their savings account, is real estate. That they don't trust the banks, so they buy condos, and even if they don't live in them, they buy them, and they do the rentals to us expats, or the winter rentals for the winter for us, summer for them. But
You probably will
they
see
own
that a
the real
lot.
estate.
You probably see that a lot in South America. We were just talking before because I just got back from Brazil, and I was talking. You always try to feel the economy, prices and all that other stuff, and you see people living, very good lives. And I was inquiring, and their social security system in Brazil is about 1/5 of what ours is, and I don't think that
Yeah.
ours is, enough to live on. And I was saying, well, then how does he live so well? And he said, well, he has a couple of properties, and it is those properties that are his income. Forget Social Security. So, once
Yeah.
again, that's just more validation. It's not just here in the United States, but all over the world. Real estate is the path.
Well, yeah. You look at the average income, and I can only speak from Ecuador, not the other countries there. But the average income was less than half of what we paid in rent, and we had one of the inexpensive places that we lived in. And so, they get a rental property that they have, but they've got twice the income, plus they've got anything else that they need on top of that. And that adds up real fast, and they can get their property for really fairly cheap if they know the right ways to do it, which is one of the things you teach people are the right ways to do it. I know.
That's right. That's right. That's our website says, buying the right properties the right way. And, and it's more about knowledge than it is about, the down payment. You go to a typical bank, they want to know one of three things. Well, actually, they want to know all three things. They want to know, what's your credit score? And if you don't have a good credit score, a lot of times they'll turn you right around and say, go work on that and come back. The second thing that they'll ask you, if you have enough credit score, that they'll entertain a conversation with you, is how much down payment you have. And only after you've overcome those two hurdles will the bank then want to know how much income you have, and then decide how much of a loan they're willing to give you. We've developed a system which is kind of flips that, all the way around. I honestly don't care what your credit score is, because I'm going to use the real estate to build your credit score and create the credit score that then will allow you to go out there and do everything, in the conventional market. So we look, first of all, at what your income is. What can you afford to pay?
Right.
Because, I talk about affordable housing, and a lot of people confuse affordable housing with low income housing or something, sort of negative. But affordable housing in its purest way is what you can afford, right?
Right.
If you make $5,000 a month, you can afford one thing. If you make $10,000 a month, you can afford something else. And generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that 1/3 of your take-home pay should go to your housing expense. And so that determines. And so automatically, if someone's already paying rent, right, they can afford a payment. And so right there, they're already half qualified, because they can afford to buy something where the rent payment and the mortgage payment are the same. And often it is.
Yeah.
Second thing we look at is the down payment, because depending on what down payment somebody has, it dictates, what type of a purchase they can make, whether it's a rent to own, whether it's, we have, private financing for people regardless of credit, et cetera. So the down payment is number two, and credit, like I said, I don't really even care, because when people who buy properties through us end up with great credit.
Right. Right. Well, now, how did you? I know you've got the great experiment, which led to the automatic landlord, but what was the journey that led you to all of that?
So, it's a funny story, and it almost sounds like a joke, but you always hear people joking about a real estate seminar that somebody went to. And when I was in college at the University of Southern California studying electrical engineering, I was just always intrigued by real estate. So I attended a seminar one weekend, and I fell in love with the whole concept. And I decided, even though my parents and everyone around me, said, you have an aptitude, go to engineering school. My father was an engineer. Everybody wanted me to be an engineer except for me.
Yeah.
But I went through I had the ability, just not the desire. But I fell in love. I tried as a broke college student to buy my first property in California. A little cracker box house, was $250,000. And we're talking about 40 years ago.
Wow.
Today, that same house, you just put a 1 or a 2 in front of it, depending on what location. That's what it is in California. So it's $1 million difference. By the way, this will come up again, where I tell people that owning real estate is $1 million decision. Not to buy, it is $1 million mistake. But anyway, that was a pivotal point, because then I started, and I did my trials and errors, and I got my bumps, my scars, but I was determined, I was determined to make it work. And then I finally bought my first property, which was very rewarding. Then I bought my second property, and I'm not just talking about the finances. I'm talking about the pride of home ownership. It's a real thing.
Right.
The curiosity of how things work, and to make things work, fix things when they don't, et cetera. It's really fun, and it's physical, right? So like when you improve your own property, you look at it and say like, hey, it looks really good. It makes me feel great. Statistically, and these are some interesting numbers. People who own real estate are not twice as wealthy as renters. The average net worth of a real estate owner today is about $280,000. The average net worth of a renter is about $9,000. So it's not a 2x, it's not even a 10x, it's a 20x difference, number one. So there's all the reasons why. So I that was a very big pivot point when I just finally said, this is what really turns me on. This is what my passion is. And I want to share that, that good experience and that pathway to, because ultimately we eventually want to be able to retire, right? And what does retirement really mean? Okay. It doesn't mean stop doing anything. It just means that you do the things that you want to do without the worry of how am I going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Right. So ultimately, Warren Buffett said it, as long as you're trading hours for dollars, you'll never be financially free. You'll work until you're dead. And so the name of the game is, and I'll tell you, I have 3 fundamental beliefs. Number 1, I told you, which is you should own real estate. And, and my mission is to help.
Notes.
Yeah,
so when I look down, that's why.
Okay. Number 2 is that you need to have your financial house in order, and that means a written financial plan. Most people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do the 2+ decades that they're going to spend in retirement, which is why 80% of Americans don't retire financially independent, which is crazy in the most prosperous country in the world, that 80% of Americans fail to achieve that financial independence, those true golden years. And the third belief is that you got to create multiple streams of income that are passive, the residual, that come in regardless of whether you go to work or go to an office. To me, retirement isn't stopping to work or stopping to do whatever it is that you like to do. It's being able to do that and to be able to make those choices. And that's what this whole thing is all about. And so when I saw that path, when I made that decision that, engineering, although it's, it's a great, profitable, noble profession, it wasn't what, really turned me on. And,
how did your family take that?
At first, they were supportive, overall,
Good.
they wanted something different from me. And they, I think at first they thought it was a passing, fascination with real estate. No, that's all good. But, then get back to work. Well, that's not what happened. So later on, we were talking about some pivot points, and I was thinking about that question, and another time came, and this was when, I built my first real estate, company. I had a number of real estate agents. I built a mortgage company. We had a number of mortgage brokers, and then along the way, my partner and I at the time were thinking about different ways, and we always liked working with investors, and we can talk about that in a second. But the one biggest complaint, right, or objection, I should say, that investors that stop investors from investing is tenants, right? They're always worried about, what if I can't find one? How do I know the right one? All this other stuff. And I said to my partner, why don't we do the property management for them for free? Okay. And most real estate agents think that I'm crazy, but I'm going to tell you that giving away value, understanding what the market is really begging for. And we said, listen, let's, we're doing this anyway for ourselves and our own properties. Why don't we give away the management? And we came up with a method that we literally, if you bought your property through us, we'll manage it for you as an investor. Because wow. I often say that real estate is like a magic CD, right? It's the same way as a CD. You go to the bank, you fill out some paperwork, you make a deposit, and then you go home and wait for the CD to mature.
Right.
Well, imagine if instead of just maturing, your CD grew in value, appreciated in value. Imagine if your CD had a whole bunch of tax advantages so that it sheltered part of the income that was coming in. Imagine if your CD also built up equity, had appreciation, and imagine that if I put $10,000 down in a CD, I get a $10,000 CD. In real estate, I put $10,000 in my magic CD, and I have $100,000 growing in value. So how do I entice more people to see that? And we said, well, we're going to give away the management. It'll be our loss leader. We're going to manage the properties for you as long as you buy it through us. That was $1 million decision. We made more money because we sold a lot more property. Our sales were already like this. When we offered free management, our sales curve was like that. And that was a aha moment, right? Because a lot of times we have a specialized knowledge and we think that we have to guard it, right? And keep
Right.
it to ourselves. I'm going to tell you that what you need to do is you need to share it, because the more people know that you have that talent, the more people will come and want to, basically reward you for that information.
Something I find interesting, and it's a little off the topic, but the same topic at the same time, is people have these talents, they have these skills, they have these abilities, but they feel they're being cocky and arrogant by offering them to other people, where other people need somebody with those talents, those skills, and those abilities. And, I always say you're selfish if you don't offer your services, your product, your whatever to other people, because somebody needs it and they don't know how to do it on their own, or they're not capable of doing it on their own. And so what you said sparked that in my mind, because I just, you've got to offer it out to people because they need it.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to even the biblical story, right? The father gave his three sons. He distributed the at that time the monetary were called talents,
Yeah.
right? And he gave each one of them a talent, and then a couple of years later they came back, and the first one said, "Listen, I took those talents and I invested them wisely, and here are 10 talents." And the father said, "Wonderful."
Wow. Good job.
Right.
Yeah.
Great job. Keep it. Right. The second son, invested it. He came back with 5 talents, and the father said, "Great job. That was the right thing to do. Keep it." The third one came back and he says, "I wanted to protect your talent. I wanted to protect the talent. So I buried them." And then the father, the father said that that's exactly what you weren't supposed to do. You didn't go and put those talents to work. Therefore, give your talents to the brothers that made something of the talents and go. And that's kind of to your story, because what we really as entrepreneurs are doing in its basic thing is finding problems, solving them. And when somebody's problem is solved, money changes hands. That's really the fundamentals of the economy. And everyone has a talent, right? Everyone is, born and develops some talent. And what they need to do is go out there and really build that talent, perfect that talent, and share that talent. And then success follows.
Right. And we've got to acknowledge we have non-talents. And so at that point, rely on other people who have the talents instead of beating ourselves up saying, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." So,
Well, we may not have talents in one area, and so then we're willing
yeah,
to to exchange money. And how many times I'm sure it's happened where people feel like you were saying, whether they're arrogant or shy, they don't want to feel salesy. Listen, present the opportunity. That's what I do all the time, is that I'm always trying to educate people on the opportunity. Some will, some won't.
yeah, and that's just it. Give them the option to take hold of an opportunity, but don't bury the talent. Don't
Yes.
hide it. And take the talents you have, develop them, and share them. And the non-talents, let those that have the talents in that area shine and prosper in their talents. So
And that
anyway,
example of the free property management, ended up building, a very profitable property management company. Most people, despise, they want to manage properties about as much as they want to go to the dentist, right?
right.
And so there it is. You're solving a problem for other people, doing something that you do well, and therefore that happens. Now, an interesting thing happened as a result of that later on. I was managing properties for a number of people, and at that time I was maintaining a residence in Florida and one in Pennsylvania. And I was going back and forth all the time. And whenever my investors would call, I'd tell them about what I'm doing. Some of them loved hearing vicariously what having that dual lifestyle. And but I had one client who's started complaining, and she said, hey, Eric, if you're spending half the month in Pennsylvania, who's watching my property? Now, her rents were coming in on time. The property was well maintained. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her property, but she was worried, and I guess imagining that I sit in front of her property watching it every day, or that I drive by her property every day. And so, I started thinking about that, she vocalized that maybe some others may think it, right? They're wondering, well, I don't know if he's the right guy for me because he's not always at my property. And I said, you know what? Here's the solution. I stopped talking about going out of town, in and out of town all the time. And she was suddenly happy because now she believed that I wasn't gone. Everything was being managed. And it gave a rise to the ideas that, a lot of the things I had started to automate and I could do from a distance anyway. So even though I was in Pennsylvania, I was still actively taking care of the repairs, of the counting and all that other stuff from wherever I was. And, think about this. This goes back about 15 plus years. Okay. Yeah. So it was very revolutionary at the time. This whole idea of online payments, paying rent online, collecting it online, and doing. So I said the great experiment was, number one, I'm not going to say anything to anybody. Number two is now you laid down a challenge. I'm going to see what else I can not do. Right. And everything from, posting 3-day notices wasn't me. Everything from, showing properties wasn't me. And that's where the automatic landlord was born. And that's why I started telling people, listen, real estate is not that scary asset to own when you can own it the automatic landlord way. You never have to. In fact, I even have investors that have never been physically to the properties that they've owned for years. Right? Because it's the magic CD thing, the rents keep rolling in, the property value keeps going up. And so it's all, and that was a pivotal point, right? It was because, as you know, perception for a lot of people is reality. And so if they perceive that everything is running smoothly, and I didn't say I was or I wasn't there, but they perceive that, he's on top of it. And that's all that mattered. And today that opened up. I wrote a book. I have a course. And today, I'm constantly teaching people the automatic landlord way to own real estate profitably and hassle-free.
Now, is the book called The Automatic Landlord?
Yes. And I'm about to release the Automatic Landlord 2.0.
Oh, awesome. And where do they get that?
Well, right now it's not available yet, but you can go to automaticlandlord.com if you're interested in getting more information or getting parts of it or learning more about the whole automatic landlord thing. Check out the website. Drop us a note there. You can leave us a message, and we'll certainly make sure you get what you're looking for.
Oh, that's awesome. Now I want to take you back on a journey, way back. Until you were a child, like 25 years ago, when you were a little tiny boy, what were some of the things that you grew up with that led you to this entrepreneurial experience? Well, now I can't think of the word I want. The entrepreneurial spirit that you're willing. Not everybody is willing or able to be an entrepreneur. It's just too scary for some.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a funny story, and this goes back to, I think it was around 5th grade. Okay. And I've had this conversation. Do you think that entrepreneurs are born? Is it a genetic predisposition, or do you learn it? But at my school at the time, and I was actually living in Brazil and going to the American school in Brazil, and they had a concession, but for some reason, well, I know what the reason was. You were not allowed to have gum in school. Okay, they sold everything: candy, lollipops, ice cream, you name it. It wasn't the lack of sugar, but I guess it was they didn't want gum sticking to walls and underneath chairs.
Walls and the desk.
Anyway, there was no gum to be bought in school, and of course, kids love chewing gum. So I figured out that I could buy a box of gum from the local ice cream guy that you would come around,
Yeah.
and you know, and buy the box, you know, for, let's just say, $1, that would come with 20 pieces of gum, and then I could sell each piece of gum for 50 cents at school.
Ah.
And I was making money as a fifth grader. Now, I ended up getting called to the principal's office for, you know, I got caught selling, you know, illegal
Contraband.
contraband
Yeah.
on campus. So I had to stop that. But that was sort of that was the first time I really saw that I liked the whole idea of business. My next real salient part was I was an avid skateboarder. I was just loved skateboarding, and I became pretty good. I was competitive on a national basis, and I started making my own skateboards. And I literally, in Brazil, where I lived there at the time, they didn't have the machines to build the skateboard tops like they had in the United States, and I figured out a way to basically glue layers of wood and create the kick, the, you know, the kick tail at the back. And me and one of my best friends had a skateboard company, and we had our own brand, and, you know, we always used to skate, and, you know, would show up in the magazines and everything. And that was, you know, my second biggest business. We ended up also doing some, you know, surfboard bodyboards with our own stuff. So it's been around. I don't know what sparked the first bubblegum business, other than the fact that there was a need. I felt it, and I thought that I was the guy to supply it until I got in trouble.
Oh, that is awesome. If you were to give a piece of advice to the listeners about living that positive life, that first class life, and I don't mean first class having multiple millions of dollars every month or sitting in the front of the airplane. It's having just that peace and happiness and success that you feel at ease. Um, what advice would you give people?
You know,
Besides, I know you've got the buy real estate, own real estate, write your financial plan, and have multiple streams of income. Outside of that, emotionally or mentally or anything else, what would you suggest?
you know, I think, my first pivot point was realizing that I have to listen to my heart and, you know, what makes me happy, right?
Right.
Engineering was was a great path, and, you know, and they laid the groundwork for it. I'm very grateful for that, but it wasn't ultimately what I would be happy with the rest. So I guess the first piece of advice I would say is start with the end in mind. You know, if you were to picture the perfect life, you know, what would you do? Okay. Now, in that same vein, I give a presentation very frequently called the Guaranteed Millionaires College Graduate Program. Okay. And, you know, I'm always hesitant because I hate saying $1 million, because that, number one, $1 million isn't what $1 million was a long time ago. And
Yeah.
and $1 million isn't what everybody's after, right? In fact,
Right.
I'll say that no one is after $1 million. They want what $1 million gives them the options to do. So
Right.
the point of my presentation is, it says, I don't care what your degree is, what your goal is. Find what you love to do and do it. If it's being a school teacher, be a school teacher. We need more great school teachers. If it's being a fireman, a policeman, you know, whatever it is, do that. However, here's the thing. Number one, whether it's graduating high school, you don't even need college. Don't let my kids hear this. But you don't really need college. College is, you know, a good path. And for many people, it's part of the building the structure. But whether you graduate, the minute that you go independent, when you're going to have your own place, own your own place. Today, with FHA loans and other loans, you know, where you're basically putting down 3% of the property's value. It's the same as first, last, and security. You know, a month's rent is about 1%. So renting and owning is pretty much the same thing. The big difference is, and this is where I said the guaranteed millionaire plan. If you were to buy your first property instead of renting your first property, and every 5 years rent that first one out and buy another one, wherever you are in your salary or life, and it doesn't matter. And
Right.
I used an example of like $200,000 property. And by the time you worked, and whether you were the school teacher or the fireman or the president of the United States, at the end of the 40 years, you worked 40 years anyway. But if you bought one house every 5 years, and they only had to put 3% down, at the end of 40 years, you'll own 10 houses. And at 40 years, that means 10 years ago, your first house was free and clear. Every 5 years, another house pops off free and clear. Using really conservative numbers, you have about, in today's dollar, about $20,000 of residual income coming in. You're worth several $1,000,000 in terms of the real estate, and you did what you loved to do. So it didn't matter. You don't have to worry about pensions or Social Security or any of that stuff, like we started the whole conversation about, right? When all of those systems don't exist or they're not insufficient, it's real estate that really props up people's dreams. And that's why I said, if you were to do that, buy one house every 5 years. Now, for some people, you could do it every 2 years or every 1 year.
Yeah.
You could buy, and and then the numbers become, fantastic.
Much
But
better. Yeah.
regardless of what you do, buy it, do that every 5 years for 40 years. You're going to retire financially independent and be able to continue and do whatever you want to do.
And one of the excuses that I hear when people talk about buying is, but the market crashes and I'll lose everything. And it's like, just don't sell it and you'll be fine because it will go back up. Everything is cyclical.
And that's a conversation that's happening in the marketplace a lot right now for two reasons. Number one, prices are up, right? But remember, they said the same thing in 2007 and 2008. And how many people today would love to buy a house at the peak of the market in 2006 and 7 if they still had it today? And
Yeah.
it's probably 2 or 3 times what it was worth then. So it's, real estate never has gone to zero. It's a hard asset, the same way gold never goes to zero, et cetera. And so that's one conversation. The second thing is, I hear people talking about, well, the interest rates are high. Okay. And unfortunately,
I remember the 27, 28% interest rates on houses. Does that age me?
It's experience.
Yeah. Well, it was
But
my
it's true. There
parents
was
that paid
17,
that,
18.
not me.
Yeah, there was super high interest rates, and it still made sense to buy. And by the way, anybody who bought during those times and still has that property is fantastically better
Yeah.
off today.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing, there's a kind of a cliche that they say is that marry the house and date the rate. Okay. The important thing to do is to get into the house, because you can always refinance when the rates are to an advantage, but you
Yeah.
can never rebuy the house in 2008 prices.
Right.
And I make a more dramatic example. During the Great Depression, everybody was running from anything, right? And except for the people that bought real estate in the Great Depression, the Great Recession of 2008, the Great Market Crash of 1980. Many of the very wealthy people I know are the people who either held on or bought while everyone else was selling.
Yeah.
So those arguments, I get it. It's from watching the news too much, but fundamentally, real estate is the most forgiving asset class out there. Even if you overpay today, wait 10 years and then tell me how bad you feel, right?
That and you brought up they got false information, maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be
And you remember the media is
the media.
just, the media is, is trying to capture eyeballs, and a lot of it is headline bait. And you could open, go on the internet any given day, and you'll hear things like sales are down, right? Sales are up. prices are, about to fall, and that's because that catches eyes. Prices are too high, all on the same day. So you really have to read deeper into what's going on, and more importantly, get with a professional that knows the market, that can guide you, kind of hold your hand through a lot of the hype. Because the one thing is today, between all the social media, all the news outlets, and all the bombardment that we have every single day, it really takes focus to
Right.
to kind of block out what's noise and focus on what is important.
One of my great mentors said the news is just sensationalized because, like you said, they're just trying to sell advertisement and get people to watch. And he says, stop watching the news. If you want to have a happy life, stop watching the news. If the world's coming to an end, someone will stop and tell you. And rely on professionals to help you with the right information that you need, and do your research. Do your own research, but just because you heard it on the news doesn't make it true. And today, it's just because you heard it on the internet doesn't make it real. Do some research.
I cut the cable years ago. I don't watch the news. I'll go in and I'll look for what I want to know, read a little bit here and there, but I'll read deeper into the subject matters. And in our business is look at the numbers. The numbers will tell you the truth, not the headlines. And so today, and I think in the last 10 years especially, so they unmask the fake news, right? So the sad thing about all of that is that we've become very skeptical about everything. Everything has to be questioned, and and the source matters.
Yeah, you're right, 100% right. Um, Now, you were telling me earlier that with your show, you always have something to talk about on your show, and that there's a trick to that. And there's a lot of people that go absolutely brain dead when they have a conversation with somebody, or they are on a program perhaps. But the big one for most people is just that one-on-one conversation, and they they have what they call mental wedgies or brain cramps. Mental wedgies. What do you do to keep things going and fresh in your life?
So, probably the number one question I get, doing a daily radio show for 25 years, is people say, like, oh, how do you keep coming up with topics? And I have two answers for that. Number one is that the radio show is about what happens every day. So every day something new happens, and whether you're talking to somebody about probably any subject, you can always, so like, how's your day today? What happened? But a little bit more systematically when it came to the radio show, because I would find myself, I'd wake up in the morning, and then I'd say, okay, what am I going to talk about? And there's so much to talk about. And
Yeah.
because there's so much to talk about, I don't know what to talk about, right?
Yep.
So what I started doing is that I every day of the week I focus on one aspect, right? So I call my Monday shows the Monday on a Mission. And so on Mondays, and every week, every year I have 52 different topics, themes. Okay. And by the time next year comes around, I can simply recycle them. But every week I have a topic. Like this week, I'm talking about how the down payment is one of the three most critical items that you have to understand before you buy a house. And so on Mondays, which I call my Monday on a Mission, I talk about the definition, the concept. So I explain why my thematic conversation is important. Then Tuesday, I go from the 10,000 foot view of the topic to our Tuesday tools, tips, and techniques. And now I get in to say, given now what we're talking about, these are the actionable things that
Right.
you can do to move the football forward, so to speak. And so it's very, relevant. Again, giving away value, giving people the information, and in reality demonstrating that you have the information. Then Wednesday is my midweek mortgage and market report. It says everybody wants to know in real estate, how's the market? What are the interest rates? Where are the interest rates going? Are they going up? They going down, etc. And so what I do is I look at the news, but in the context of what my theme is. So if my theme is down payment, well, in politics, they're talking about down payment programs and they're talking about, housing. And so it all kind of gets in. And I use my Wednesday to reinforce the why and the what's. Then Thursday, back in the 2000, right before the crash, they were criticizing real estate investors for using their real estate like an ATM. That they would the house would appreciate, they would take the money out, buy more properties, and if they bought more properties, they did very, very well. If they ran up credit cards, then used their house to pay off the credit cards, and then ran the credit cards up, that's a problem,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's where the criticism mostly came from. And I said, listen, your house is not an ATM. And if it is, it's a great ATM, right? Because of the appreciation and everything. So my Thursday shows is called the ATM edition of the real estate show. And I sort of poke fun back at it, but it's really talking about the money, right? What it takes to buy a property, what's qualifying, how to look for returns, where to, what particular key performance indicators to watch for and so forth. So Thursday is about the money, and that's why I call it the ATM edition. And then Friday's sort of a quick recap of everything. So it's a shorter version of every day of the week, recapping the week, and then sending people off to, in the weekend to go do something with the information. So now when I wake up, I know what my theme is for the week. So if the whole week is already taken care of, I know what aspect I have to talk about. And be honest, and I told you this before we came on our interview, as I said, I get pulled off the air more often than I run out of air.
Yeah, it's like, it's time. We want to hear your show. So how do people tune into your show?
A couple of ways. Number one, you can go to our website, automaticlandlord.com. At the top of the page, you'll see where it says radio show notes. So every day I also I give away my script. So all the information that I give out is up there in the radio show notes.
Oh, that's awesome.
I also record every show. And so I post a link so that you can listen to, download on demand. You can binge watch the show for all you like. And so that's there at Automatic Landlord. I also do it Facebook Live. So you can actually watch the radio show live every day. So if you go to facebook.com/The Real Estate Show, no spaces. So it just says /The Real Estate Show. If you don't have a Facebook, doesn't matter. You can still get there by doing that. If you have a Facebook page, just look up The Real Estate Show as one word, and it'll take you there. And you can, you again, it's all there in reverse chronological order. Decades of programs are up there. There's probably more content on that website And so that's there at Automatic Landlord. I also do it Facebook Live, so you can actually watch the radio show live every day. So if you go to facebook.com/The Real Estate Show, no spaces, so it just says /The Real Estate Show. If you don't have a Facebook, doesn't matter. You can still get there by doing that. If you have a Facebook page, just look up The Real Estate Show as one word, and it'll take you there. And you can, you again, it's all there in reverse chronological order. Decades of programs are up there. There's probably more content on that website than there is in any course that you could buy out there.
Oh, amen. Absolutely. Well, that's exciting. You're just so filled with so many wonderful things. And I met you at a speaker's event, and I met you with your father. And how is your father doing with the real estate? And I know you said they're supportive, but is he still supportive of that, or does he go
He's, one of my regular
seriously?
listeners to the radio show every single day. Ironically, he's 89 years old now, so he's getting up there. So he's more of a spectator than a participator. But recently, for physical reasons, he now lives with me, but we took his house. Instead of selling it, he's got more rental income coming in, and
Right.
basically we doubled his Social Security and pension income thanks to his real estate advisor.
What a great advisor you are. I'm so proud of you. Look at you. Take care of your dad and the world. That is just awesome. Well, tell us some of the fun experiences and stories that you've had with closing real estate deals or helping other people close real estate deals.
Wow, there's over the years there's so many, and I told you the story about the Automatic Landlord. And for so many people, when we started offering the management, it's like a whole weight got lifted off of their shoulders. And ironically, the regular market, the average real estate agent thinks that I'm crazy for doing this, and I don't mind if they continue to think that, and they can continue to do things the conventional ways. But literally, I have retired